The next morning, sunlight spilled softly across the penthouse floor. Abigail blinked awake to the sound of quiet music, a soft jazz melody drifting from somewhere in the kitchen. For a moment, she thought she was still dreaming. Then she smelled pancakes. "Jay?" she called sleepily. "Good morning, sleepyhead," he said from behind the counter, wearing a plain white shirt and gray sweatpants. His sleeves were rolled up, and his hair was slightly messy. He looked ordinary, peaceful, human. She smiled. "You look like a man who actually sleeps sometimes." "Only when you're here," he said, flipping another pancake. She raised an eyebrow. "Are you flirting or just being honest?" He turned, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "Both." It was the kind of morning she used to pray for, one without fear, loneliness, or tears. She stood, adjusting her oversized t-shirt, and joined him in the kitchen. "I didn't know Mafia bosses cooked breakfast," she teased. "I didn't know pregnant women could be this beautiful first thing in the morning," he countered smoothly. She laughed, shaking her head. "You're dangerous. Only for the right reasons," he murmured. They ate together, and every bite felt like a shared secret. Between sips of orange juice and teasing comments, Jay found himself watching her more than eating. He loved the way she tilted her head when she smiled, the way she touched her bump before every sentence, like she was including her baby in the conversation. After breakfast, he insisted on driving her home, but she refused. "Jay, I can walk. I'm not made of glass," she said with a small pout. "I know," he said, picking up her bag anyway. "But if something happened to you, I'd never forgive myself." She rolled her eyes playfully but let him lead the way. When they stepped into the elevator, the silence between them was charged. Not awkward, just full of things unsaid. When the doors opened at the lobby, a man in a dark suit stepped aside respectfully. Jay's demeanor changed instantly, eyes sharp, posture alert. The man gave a small nod. "Boss." Abigail noticed the switch. The warmth in Jay's face faded, replaced by authority. She didn't ask who the man was. She didn't have to. Once outside, she turned to him. "Do people always call you that, boss?" He paused, glancing down at her. "Only when they have to." "And what do I call you?" she teased softly. He smiled faintly. "Jay. Always Jay." They shared a quiet look before she got into the car. Later that afternoon, Abigail worked from her small home office, trying to focus on her tasks. But her mind kept drifting back to Jay, the softness in his eyes, the way he listened to her stories about Nairobi and Ugali, the way he made her feel seen. She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the knock on her door. When she opened it, her heart froze. Standing there was Minho, her ex-fiancé. He looked thinner than before, his once perfect hair now messy, his suit slightly wrinkled. But his eyes still carried that same arrogant shine. "Abigail," he said softly, as if tasting her name. "You look different." She blinked in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, his gaze dropping to her stomach. "I came to see you. And our child." Her hand instinctively moved to her belly. "You lost that right the day you walked out." "I made a mistake," he said, his tone almost pleading. "I panicked. I wasn't ready, and I panicked." Her voice trembled. "You abandoned me. You blocked me. You left me to raise this baby alone in a foreign country." He lowered his head, ashamed. "I know, and I regret it. Every single day." Abigail's heart pounded. The nerve of him, showing up after all this time, pretending remorse could erase months of tears. "Leave Minho," she said coldly. "There's nothing left for you here." He hesitated. "You're with someone else, aren't you?" Abigail froze. Minho's jaw tightened. "Who is he?" Before she could answer, a deep voice spoke from behind her. "Someone who doesn't walk away from what he loves." She turned sharply. Jay stood at the end of the hallway, calm, controlled, but his presence filled the space like thunder. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "Jay?" she whispered. Minho squared his shoulders. "And you are?" Jay stepped closer, his tone icy. "The man who makes sure she never cries again." The air grew heavy. The tension between them could slice through glass. Abigail stepped between them quickly. Stop, please. This isn't the time or place. Minho smirked. So this is him, the one replacing me. Jay's expression didn't change. No one replaces a mistake. They just clean up after it. Enough, Abigail shouted. Her voice cracked through the hallway. Both men fell silent. She turned to Minho, her eyes glistening. You had your chance, she said quietly. Now please go. Minho hesitated, then nodded. You'll regret this, Abigail. He's not who you think he is. He turned and walked away. Abigail stood trembling, tears threatening to fall. Jay stepped forward, his voice softening. Are you okay? She nodded weakly. I wasn't ready to see him again. I know. He touched her arm gently. You don't have to face him alone anymore. She looked up at him. The man who had found her by accident, stayed by choice, and protected her like his own heartbeat. But she couldn't ignore what Minho had said. He's not who you think he is. That night, after Jay drove her home again, she couldn't sleep. The question haunted her. Who exactly was he? Meanwhile, across the city, Jay stood by his office window, looking at the photo on his phone, the one someone had taken of him and Abigail on the balcony. His hand tightened around the device. Find out who sent this, he ordered coldly. And if Minho is behind it, bury him quietly. The soft winter sun spilled through the curtains of Jay's penthouse, painting gold lines across Abigail's cocoa skin. She stretched slowly, her hand instinctively brushing over her growing belly. The mornings had become her favorite, when everything felt calm, safe, and quiet. Jay had been awake for hours. She could hear him humming somewhere in the kitchen, his deep, raspy voice blending with the soft jazz he always played when cooking. The smell of fried eggs, garlic toast, and something sweet, probably strawberries, filled the room. Good morning, sleepyhead, he called out. She smiled, her voice still thick from sleep. You're too loud for someone who claims to be a Mafia boss. He laughed, appearing at the doorway holding a tray. And you're too beautiful for someone who keeps calling me a Mafia boss. The tray had everything she craved. Pancakes stacked high, whipped cream, and a cup of warm milk. Jay had learned every detail of her weird pregnancy cravings, even the ones that made him blush, like peanut butter and pickles. When he placed the tray on her lap, she looked up at him. You're spoiling me. That's my job now, he said softly. You, the baby, my world. The words hit her heart differently that morning. Maybe because of how tender his tone was. Maybe because the baby kicked right then, reminding her that life was growing inside her. She reached for his hand and placed it on her stomach. His eyes softened immediately. She's saying hi, Abigail whispered. She? Jay's grin widened. So it's a girl? She kicks with attitude. It must be a girl, she teased. He chuckled, kissing her forehead gently. But when he pulled back, he noticed something. Her lips were paler than usual. Her eyes, though bright, had shadows beneath them. You look tired, he said, concern breaking his smile. It's normal. I just didn't sleep much, she said lightly, brushing it off. The baby was restless last night, but Jay wasn't convinced. He sat beside her, brushing his thumb along her arm. You promise you'll tell me if anything feels off? I promise, she said with a small smile. Later that day, they went shopping for baby clothes. Jay insisted on carrying every single bag, refusing to let her lift anything heavier than her purse. At the baby section of a quiet store in Gangnam, Abigail held up a tiny onesie with a yellow bunny on it. Can you imagine her in this? Jay's eyes softened. She'll look like you. Tiny and perfect. She laughed, playfully smacking his arm. Tiny? You think I'm tiny? He leaned closer. You're exactly my size. She rolled her eyes but blushed anyway. Their laughter filled the store, drawing a few smiles from strangers nearby. They looked like a couple deeply in love, the kind who made others secretly hope for the same. But as they reached the checkout, Abigail suddenly felt dizzy. The floor shifted under her feet, her vision flickering white. Abby! Jay's voice came sharp with alarm. She blinked rapidly, gripping his arm. I'm fine, just a bit lightheaded. He immediately guided her to a bench. His hand trembled slightly as he fanned her with a receipt. "You scared me. I told you I'm okay," she said, forcing a weak laugh. "Maybe I just need water." He went and returned with a bottle in seconds. She sipped slowly, watching his expression. His brows furrowed, his jaw tense. He had the look of a man used to control, but terrified of losing someone he couldn't protect with fists or guns. When her color returned, she smiled faintly. "See? I'm okay. Don't go all Mafia mode in a baby store." That earned a reluctant laugh from him. "You'll never let me live that down, huh?" "Never," she said softly. That evening, they curled up together on the couch. The city lights of Seoul glimmered through the tall glass windows. Abigail rested her head on his chest, tracing circles on his shirt. "You ever wonder what kind of father you'll be?" she asked. He paused. "Every day. And I want to be the kind who shows up," he said after a while. "Not just for birthdays or big moments, but for quiet things, like this, sitting, laughing, breathing the same air." Abigail smiled, but she didn't respond right away. Her heart was warm, yet something in her chest ached, an invisible pressure she couldn't explain. She took a deep breath and looked up at him. "You're already that man, Jay." He looked down at her and whispered, "And you're already the love I never knew I could have." Their lips met slowly, tenderly. It wasn't just passion, it was peace, the kind of kiss that promised safety. When he deepened it, she melted into him, her hand sliding over his jaw. The baby kicked between them, and they both laughed softly against each other's lips. "Guess someone's jealous," she murmured. "Then she better get used to sharing," he teased. For a long while, they stayed like that, whispering, touching, listening to the hum of the city below. But when Abigail got up to use the bathroom, she paused, pressing a hand to her stomach. Something didn't feel right. It wasn't pain, just heaviness. The strange, deep tug. She forced a smile and told herself it was nothing, just fatigue. She'd tell Jay tomorrow. But as she looked at her reflection in the mirror, the faint color draining from her cheeks, fear crept into her heart like a shadow. Later, she climbed back into bed beside him. Jay was already half asleep, one hand resting protectively on her side. She turned toward him, whispering, "Good night, my love." His sleepy voice answered, "Good night, my world." And for a moment it felt perfect again, like the universe had paused just for them. But outside, the snow began to fall quietly over Seoul, soft and white, hiding the roads below, foreshadowing that not all beauty comes without sorrow. The night air over Seoul was colder than usual. The city lights shimmered beneath the falling snow, the hum of cars and late cafes filling the quiet spaces between heartbeats. Inside Jay's penthouse, the warmth of laughter lingered. Abigail had just finished folding the tiny onesies they'd bought earlier, her belly round beneath the soft glow of the living room lamp. Jay sat on the couch watching her with that familiar smile, the one that said she was his piece. "You're not supposed to be on your feet that long," he reminded gently. "I'm just organizing," she said, brushing him off playfully. "You know I can't sleep when things are messy." He chuckled, stood up, and came behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You're nesting already," he teased, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Maybe I am," she admitted, leaning into him. "Maybe I just want everything perfect before she comes." "She," he said again, smiling. "I still can't believe I might have a daughter." Abigail turned in his arms to face him. "You already do," she whispered. He kissed her softly, slow, deep, grateful. The kind of kiss that made the world fade. But then she suddenly froze. Her breath hitched. Jay pulled back instantly. "Abby," she swallowed, pressing a hand to her stomach. "It's nothing, just a sharp pain." His heart jumped. "Sit down. Now." "I'm okay." "No, you're not." His voice cracked slightly. He guided her to the couch, his hands trembling as he brushed her hair from her face. "Is it the baby? Are you cramping?" She nodded faintly, trying to breathe through it. "It'll pass. Sometimes this happens, right?" But even as she said it, her face went pale. The pain wasn't easing, it was spreading, deep and heavy. She clutched his hand, her nails digging into his skin. "Jay!" she whispered, her voice breaking. Something's wrong. And then everything happened too fast. A wave of dizziness hit her like lightning. Her vision blurred, the room spinning. She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. Jay caught her just as her knees buckled, his heart pounding wildly against his ribs. "Abigail!" he shouted, shaking her gently. "Stay with me, love. Please." She blinked weakly, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "Jay, don't panic, please." But he already was. He scooped her into his arms, his voice breaking as he yelled for his driver. The elevator felt like an eternity. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold. He kept whispering her name like a prayer, as if saying it could anchor her to life. "Don't do this to me, Abby," he muttered, holding her tighter. "Please don't leave me. You're my everything. You and the baby, please." The hospital lights were blinding when they burst through the emergency doors. Nurses rushed forward, voices overlapping. Pregnant woman, severe cramps, fainted en route. Jay didn't let go until they pulled her toward the emergency room doors. "Sir, you have to wait outside," a nurse said firmly. "Please, that's my fiancé. I know, but you have to wait." The doors closed before he could respond. He stood there frozen, his hands still shaking, her scent still clinging to his clothes. Minutes turned into hours. He paced the hallway like a man lost between hope and hell. Every time the doors swung open, his heart stopped, but it was never the doctor. Just more silence. Finally, a nurse came out. Her face said everything before her words did. "Mr. J. She's stable now. But, I'm sorry." He didn't hear the rest at first. The world became muffled, like he was underwater. When he finally walked into the room, Abigail was lying on the bed, pale, fragile, her eyes red from crying. He went to her quietly, his chest breaking with every step. She looked up at him with trembling lips. "It's gone, Jay." The words shattered him. He sank beside her, his hand covering hers. She sobbed softly, and he pressed her hand to his lips, tears falling freely. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have noticed sooner. I should have." She cut him off weakly. "Don't blame yourself." "How can I not?" His voice cracked. "You and that baby. You were my reason to breathe." She turned her face toward him, tears slipping down her cheeks. She was ours. And maybe she wasn't meant to stay long. Maybe she just came to remind us what love can create. Her words, so gentle even in pain, broke him completely. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, his tears soaking into her skin. For a long while, neither spoke. Only their breathing and the quiet hum of machines filled the room. Then Jay whispered, "We'll try again someday. When you're ready. When your heart is ready." Abigail blinked slowly, exhaustion washing over her. "Promise me you won't walk away. That you'll stay." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumb wiping a tear from her cheek. "Abby, I found my home in you. I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever." She smiled faintly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then maybe we'll be okay." He pulled her close, careful not to hurt her, resting her head against his chest. Outside, the snow kept falling soft and endless, as if the world itself was mourning with them. In that cold, quiet night, surrounded by machines and fading hope, they clung to each other, broken but together. And somewhere deep within that heartbreak, love still flickered, fragile, trembling, but alive. The days after the hospital were quiet. Too quiet. Jay's penthouse, once full of laughter and the scent of baby clothes and pancakes, felt like a hollow shell. The crib they'd bought together stood untouched in the corner of the bedroom, a ghost of dreams that had slipped through their fingers. Abigail barely spoke. She spent hours staring out the window, watching the city move on without her. Jay never pushed her to talk. He just stayed close, sitting near, cooking for her, brushing her hair gently when she couldn't sleep. One night, he found her standing by the balcony in her robe, her eyes fixed on the falling snow. "You'll catch a cold," he said softly, stepping closer. "I can't sleep," she murmured. "Me neither." Silence stretched between them like fragile glass. Then she whispered, "I keep thinking about her, wondering if she would have had your eyes. Jay swallowed hard. She would have had your smile. Her lips trembled. I'm scared to forget her. He came closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Then we won't. We'll keep her here, he said, placing her hand over his heart. Always. Abigail turned and pressed her forehead against his chest. For the first time since the loss, she cried. Not the silent tears of guilt, but deep, shaking sobs that came from a place she had kept locked away. Jay held her tight, saying nothing. His shirt soaked through, but he didn't care. When the storm passed, she whispered against his chest. Can we get away from here? Just for a little while. He nodded immediately. Anywhere you want. They drove the next morning to a small coastal town a few hours from Seoul. The sea was calm, the air crisp with salt and wind. Jay had chosen a secluded villa overlooking the ocean. Simple, quiet, and surrounded by pine trees. When they arrived, Abigail stood by the cliff, letting the breeze whip her curls. She took a long, shaky breath. It's beautiful. Jay smiled faintly. You needed somewhere the city can't reach you. He carried their bags in, insisting she rest while he prepared something to eat. But instead of resting, she wandered to the shore, her bare feet sinking into the sand. The waves crashed softly, rhythmic and endless, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. For the first time in weeks, she felt something stir inside her. Not joy yet, but calm. When she turned, Jay was watching her from the porch, hands in his pockets, eyes full of the same tenderness that had saved her more than once. Come here, he said quietly. She walked back, her robe fluttering in the wind. He wrapped her in a blanket and handed her a mug of warm tea. You think the sea remembers? She asked suddenly. Remembers what? Everything it touches. All the things people lose. Jay looked out at the waves. Maybe that's why it never stops moving. They sat side by side in silence, the sea whispering below. Eventually, Abigail leaned on his shoulder. I don't know how to be okay again. You don't have to know, he said. You just have to breathe. I'll do the rest with you. The days blended into each other. Slow mornings, quiet walks, shared meals. Jay made her laugh again, sometimes with clumsy jokes, other times by pretending to cook when he could barely boil water. One afternoon, he came running in from the market, holding a small seashell necklace. It's not gold or diamonds, he said, slightly out of breath. But it's what the sea gave me. Abigail chuckled softly, taking it from him. You're hopeless. Hopelessly yours, he said, with that half-smile that melted her. She laughed properly this time, a sound he hadn't heard since before the hospital. The sound of her laughter echoed off the walls, filling the villa with something that felt like life again. That night, they sat by the fire, the glow painting their faces in amber light. Abigail whispered, You should have left me when it happened. Jay's expression hardened. Don't ever say that. I'm broken, she said quietly. I can't even give you what you wanted most. He took her hand, his thumb tracing her palm. Abby, I didn't stay for what you could give me. I stayed because I can't breathe in a world without you. Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they were softer. You really mean that? He nodded, cupping her face gently. You saved me the day you sent that wrong message. You gave me something to live for. You think I'm going anywhere now? She smiled through tears, whispering, You're too stubborn. He chuckled. Takes one to know one. They stayed close like that, wrapped in the quiet comfort of understanding. There was no need for promises. The way he looked at her said everything. A few mornings later, Abigail woke before sunrise. She stepped out to the porch and watched the horizon glow pink over the water. The sea breeze lifted her curls as she whispered a quiet prayer. Not of sadness, but of peace. She touched the shell necklace around her neck, smiling faintly. When Jay joined her, she turned and said softly, I think I'm ready to go home. He studied her face for a moment, the calm in her eyes, the light returning to her smile, and nodded. Then we go home. As they stood together watching the sunrise, he slid his arm around her waist and kissed her temple. We'll try again, he whispered. When it's time. She leaned into him, heart steady for the first time in weeks. And this time, she said, we'll make it together. The waves roared softly below them, carrying away the last of their pain. Not erasing it, but turning it into something gentler, something like healing. The first light of dawn spilled across Seoul, painting the glass towers in soft golds and pinks. The city stirred slowly, holding its breath as if waiting for something miraculous. Abigail sat by the window of their sunlit apartment, her hands resting gently on her stomach. She smiled softly, feeling the life growing inside her. This time it had been a journey. Slow, tender, careful. After weeks of quiet healing and laughter on their seaside getaway, they had returned to Seoul, stronger and closer than ever. Jay stood behind her, arms around her waist. "Feeling okay?" he asked, pressing his lips to her hair. "I am," she said, leaning into him. "It's amazing how brave you can be. Just standing there, always holding me." He kissed her temple. "I'll always hold you, Abby, no matter what." Hadn't been easy. For weeks after the miscarriage, they had taken it slowly. Doctor visits, gentle walks, quiet evenings curled on the couch. There had been tears, whispers of fear, and nights when they simply held each other, not speaking, letting their hearts mend in the silence. Then, one morning, Abigail had looked at him across their breakfast table, sunlight spilling over her hair, and whispered, I think I'm ready to try again." Jay had smiled, eyes softening with a mix of relief and love. "We'll take it slow, no pressure, just us together." They had started with gentle hope, shared laughter, whispered words of encouragement, quiet evenings where the world shrank to just them. Every touch, every kiss, every soft moment became a promise. They weren't rushing. They were savoring every heartbeat, every flutter of connection. It was intimate, yes, but it was also laughter, jokes, silly nicknames, and playful dances in the living room when a song came on. They fell in love again in slow, deliberate ways, strengthening the bond that had survived heartbreak. Weeks later, Abigail had noticed small signs. A flutter, a warmth, a quiet sense of life. She hesitated at first, afraid to hope too soon. But Jay had been patient, noticing her uncertainty, holding her hand and whispering, "Whatever it is, we face it together." The day of the confirmation, the clinic smelled faintly of antiseptic and flowers. Abigail's hands trembled as the nurse prepared the test. Jay squeezed her hand, his eyes warm, steady. "Whatever happens," he said, voice low. "We're already a family." She smiled faintly. "I know." The ultrasound screen flickered, and the tiny heartbeat appeared. Steady, unwavering. Abigail gasped. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Jay, it's working. She's alive." Jay's eyes glimmered as he pressed her hand to his lips. "Our little miracle," he whispered. "We did it. We really did it." They held each other in the quiet clinic room, letting the soft sound of the heartbeat fill the space. It wasn't just a baby they had created. It was hope, love, and healing made tangible. That evening, they returned home and sat on their balcony. Seoul spread below in gold and pink. Abigail rested her head on Jay's shoulder, feeling the tiny flutter inside her again. "Can you believe this?" she whispered. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I can. I always knew we'd get here, together." She pressed her hand to her stomach. "I never thought I'd be this happy again. After everything." "You deserve this," he said, voice steady and soft. "And we'll take every moment, every heartbeat, every smile, all of it." Abigail laughed softly, tears of joy glimmering. "A new dawn, huh?" He kissed her temple. "Yes, a new dawn, our dawn. And this time, nothing can take it away." The city lights below twinkled like a million tiny stars. The air was filled with the faint scent of spring blossoms. In that quiet, cinematic moment, the world itself seemed to pause, holding its breath as they embraced their second chance. Weeks passed, and their days blended into soft routines, cooking breakfast together, laughing over clumsy attempts at dinner, evening walks along the river, and quiet nights on the balcony, hands intertwined. Every movement of the baby inside Abigail reminded them that life had a way of returning, even after heartbreak. One morning, Abigail awoke early, sunlight turning her hair to burnished copper. She stepped onto the balcony and felt the wind on her face. Jay joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "We did it," he said softly, handing her a mug. "Did what?" she asked, smiling. "This us. Everything. All the moments that brought us here." She leaned into him. "Then let's keep doing it," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, wrapping her close. "Forever. Always. No matter what." And deep inside, in the flutter of tiny kicks, in the warmth of their embrace, they knew, no matter what came next, they were together. They were family. Love had not only returned, it had flourished. The city stretched out before them, golden and alive. The future awaited, wide, open, and full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Abigail and Jay felt the world finally align with their hearts. The sun rose higher, painting the sky with brilliant hues, and they stood together, hands on her stomach, hearts intertwined, watching the dawn of their new life, a life built on love, resilience, and hope. The park was alive with the soft hum of spring, blossoms drifting in the breeze, children laughing, and the distant rhythm of the city beyond the trees. Abigail sat on a bench, sunlight turning her hair to copper, watching a little girl chase after a bright yellow ball. The girl's laughter rang through the air, pure and full of life, a sound that made her chest ache with joy. Jay crouched beside the little one, guiding her hands as she tried to kick the ball properly. His eyes sparkled, the same warmth that had carried Abigail through heartbreak now lighting up his whole face. "Good job, Mia," he cheered, lifting her high into his arms. Abigail laughed, clapping her hands. "She's getting so big. She's perfect," Jay said, turning to kiss Abigail's cheek. "Just like her mother." Abigail leaned into him, smiling softly. "And you," she whispered, "you made all this possible." Jay shook his head gently. "We made it together. All of it. Every laugh, every tear, every heartbeat." The little girl ran back to them, her curls bouncing. "Mommy, Daddy, look." Abigail held her arms wide. "I see you, sweetheart." Jay laughed, sweeping both of them into a hug. Their hearts beat together, strong and steady. A rhythm that had survived storms, heartbreak, and loss, and now thrived in sunlight and laughter. The breeze carried the scent of blossoms, the warmth of the sun, and the quiet promise of endless tomorrows. Abigail looked at Jay, then at their daughter, and whispered, "This is everything." Jay kissed her forehead. "Everything we dreamed of, and more." The three of them stood together in the golden light, hands intertwined, hearts entwined, watching the world move around them. And in that moment, the past felt like a shadow, distant and powerless, as love, patient, resilient, unyielding, had finally triumphed. The city stretched beyond the park, alive and vibrant. But here, in their little world, it was just them, wrapped in laughter, sunlight, and the
Hello, besties. In this sweet story, we learned that sometimes the greatest blessings come from life's biggest mistakes. Abigail's strong message led her to the right man, proving that love doesn't always arrive in the perfect way, but it finds us when we need it most. Through heartbreak, loss, and healing, she learned that true love isn't about perfection. It's about presence. Someone who shows up, stays, and loves you through your scars. Besties, even pain can be the path to purpose, and what feels like an ending can secretly be a beautiful new beginning. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share.